Hey, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Luke from Astro Awakening. In this video, we're going to be discussing the full moon in Leo. Now, I have done a breakdown of the astrology for the whole month of February. Check it out through my YouTube library. But this is going to be a little short, compact video on the Leo full moon. I'm going to run through the moon in the houses. So one thing I get asked quite often is, what can I expect? What should I do? How do I prepare? What's the best use of the energy? But before we even get to that point, we have to establish whether this lunation is going to be significant for you, because each astrological alignment, be it an alignment between planetary energies, like an aspect or a conjunction, or an ingress into a new sign, or a lunation, is going to impact each of us differently. So I wanted to start this video by illustrating why that is the case, and then how to understand, to make the cosmic clock, what's happening for all of us, which we would call the transits, how we understand them from a personal perspective, if they are to manifest at all uniquely in our life. Because you may have experienced certain, promotional energy and information about particular astrological events or alignments, and then they've come to pass and you've gone, well, that was a bit of a, nothing, anticlimax, nothing really happened. Yet for other people, significant events, turning points, crisis, revelations can happen with these particular placements. So understanding that, we're going to have a look quickly at the sky clock, and hopefully I can illustrate this with my, my laptop camera. But if we imagine that this inner circle here represents your birth chart, let's just call it that, which, it's a circle, and encased within that circle is you and all the different aspects of yourself and your personality. And in a chart, they're depicted by different placements within the chart. So we all have the, let's just call that 0 Aries over here, and we call this one Libra over here. We would call this one Capricorn for us in the Southern Hemisphere. That's, I've butchered that. And then we would have Cancer down here. This is my left hand, so bear with me. Hey, not too bad for left-handed. But let's just say this circle here represents the you, the self, your expression of consciousness. And we can understand that. This is why astrology is a fantastic tool, because we can understand that through the lens of your natal chart or your birth chart. If this was a natal chart, this line would depict the horizon at the time of birth, and any planetary energies above the line would be in the sky at the time of birth. So if you're born with the sun in this half of the chart, you're born with the day chart, in other words, during the daytime. If you're born with the sun in this half of the chart, you're born with the night chart, with the sun in the nighttime. Pretty easy to understand. This would be the eastern side, this would be the western side. On the eastern side, which is the spiritual side, because this is where the sun rises every single day. This is also known as the rising sign. But if we think about our birth chart as depicting our unique individual cosmic antenna receiver system, okay, and our individual unique cosmic antenna receiver and transmitting system, should I say. In that, we all have the 12 signs of the zodiac. We all have the 10 planets, 7 traditional, 3 modern planets, plus all the placements, plus the rising and descendant, the MC and the IC. We all have that. We're all just put together in different ways, and based on the exact time, date, and location of your birth, we can understand what was the sky clock saying, what was the time on the clock at that specific time, because that becomes your energetic blueprint, or your conscious blueprint for the evolution of your soul through this physical lifetime. It can help us understand a little bit of your past stuff and a little bit of your future stuff, but mostly it's like the unfoldment of you and the potential of you in this life. So at the moment, we have a Leo full moon at 16 degrees of Leo. Let's just say that this little dot here, when you leave the lid off these, don't ever do this at home, kids. When you leave the lid off these pens, they stop working. They dry out, especially in the hot Queensland climate, which is where I am. But let's just say that that little blue dot there represents 16 degrees of Leo. Let's use this outer circle now as representing the great cosmic clock in the sky. So what's happening is the moon is going to be here at 16 degrees of Leo. And this is the sun over here, okay, at 16 degrees of Aquarius. They are going to oppose each other, right? Which is creating an alignment. An opposition creates an alignment. And this opposition creates this releasing of energy, right? It's happening. It's going to transport from the cosmic clock down into this realm. And it's going to activate this axis here at 16 degrees of Leo and Aquarius. Now, if in your natal chart you have some significant planet or placement or point at 16 degrees of Leo, this would be a very significant lunation for you. Now, albeit it may not be like a life-changing event because it's just a full moon, right? It's not necessarily like a Saturn transit or a an opposition from Uranus, so to speak, which are pretty, heavy, long-term transitional, transformational alignments. Whereas we have every single month, we have a new moon and a full moon, a new moon and a full moon. It's almost like the inhalation and the exhalation of the cosmic mind is indicated by, on a very micro perspective, the new moon and the full moon. But if you have, let's say this was your chart, and you have your sun at 16 degrees of Leo, I've done it again with the lid off these pens. So if you have your, which I think 16 degrees of like the 8th of August, somewhere around there, and in your chart, your sun is at that, well, then this moon is going to activate that solar energy. So therefore, the cosmic clock, right, has now a channel of expression through your uniqueness because it activates a particular point. So not everyone is going to have something at 16 degrees Leo, 16 degrees Aquarius. Mind you, if you are 16 degrees Aquarius, happy birthday for tomorrow. If you're a 16 degrees Leo, then you're having a lunar return. Just happens to be a full moon. But not everyone is going to have something significant at that point. If you've got a planet, especially a personal planet, then this may be felt for some way for you personally. And through this video, I'm going to break down quickly the dynamic between Aquarius and Leo and what to expect. And then we're going to run through the different 12 houses and understand a little bit about what you may expect. If you've got an angle at 16 degrees of one of the fixed signs, then this could be a significant lunation for you. So understanding that everyone is different and not everyone is going to be impacted by this. So when it comes down to what do I do, what to expect, how do I prepare, then if you're uncertain, I would say do nothing. Just allow. Perhaps the best advice I could give is just a little bit of grounding, feet on the ground, and maybe just an acknowledgement of like an exhalation. When we exhale, we're releasing. Okay, so we've taken in through the inhalation, and our body is now using that energy that we've gotten through the oxidization of our lungs and our blood. And then we're exhaling the carbon dioxide that we no longer need. So if we are thinking about a new moon as the breath in, the intake, right? When we get to the full moon, we're like, and that full moon, the initial of breath or the releasing of energy happens at the full moon, usually within the sort of 1 day before, 1 day during, 1 day after. So it's like a 3-day experience. You can be building up to that. And then the releasing of energy. Now, the unfoldment of that release of energy will take around about 2 weeks before we get to the new moon, the next new moon being a new moon in Pisces. Understanding this particular lunation now is we're bringing up energy that needs to be released that's going to help balance these archetypes, right? We've had the sun highlighting Aquarius, and it's also in the same sign as Saturn. Saturn, the co-ruler of Aquarius. Saturn's been in Aquarius since about March 2020. So, and Saturn's coming to the end of Aquarius. In fact, by March the 8th this year, Saturn will ingress into Pisces and be done with Aquarius. So, yay for that. So this breath out is also releasing a lot of Saturn energy that's been happening as Saturn's transited through Aquarius. When did that happen? 2020. So what's been going on in this particular period of time with Saturn or authority in Aquarius, the group consciousness, right? The connection to one another, connection to this idea that we're all in this together, to community at large. So it challenges the Leo archetype. And over the last 3 years, the Leo archetype has been extremely challenged because Leo is about personal will, personal power, personal sovereignty. It's the regal or royal sign. So you think about rulership, and whose rulership have we been under, right? And if you have wanted to express personal will, personal choice, personal power in the last couple of years, you've had to go against the many. You've had to go against the authority that has said, we're all in this together and it's for the greater good. You've actually had to challenge that sort of dynamic, which is, you know, hang on, this isn't right for me. I get to choose. I'm a sovereign being. I'm my own authority. I will make my decisions, right? Which is that I am aspect, which is very fire sign in particular, but also sun and Leo sign. It's that I am that I am. I you know, I am that am I. Sorry, that's how we say it. I am that am I. So it's really challenged that, but you've had to disconnect, okay, from, if you've wanted to be in the camp of like sovereignty and personal will and choice and power, and to become your own ruler, royal, regal authority, you've had to challenge the status quo, you've had to challenge the establishment, you've had to challenge the rules, you've had to challenge the mandates, the coercions, you've had to challenge the collective, you've had to challenge your group consciousness, you've had to challenge your social connection, your family connections, you've had to challenge a lot of these Aquarian type sort of archetypes to establish your own personal will and power. And what's been happening as well is it's been really difficult to express our unique individual self because there's been censorship, but there's also been this sort of, you know, what we would call virtue signaling from this leftist type camp, you know. So it's been really hard to sort of stand out here on your Leo side of things, and been very challenging for that sign in particular. But the great exhalation is happening, the great releasing of that. And so the equilibrium can come back, and the universe will always balance. This great circle, the cosmic clock, is a circle, right, with 12 archetypes. That's divided by 2, which is the number of numerology of balance, is 6. So there are 6 different sort of pairs, if you like, within this. And at the moment, we've had this Aquarian energy, which, albeit has been a little bit dysfunctional, it hasn't been, we haven't had Aquarian energy in the last 3 years balanced with Leo. We've had Aquarian energy at the cost of Leo. So we've tipped the scales really heavily onto the Aquarian energy side, which is, you know, social distancing, mandates, coercion, control, external authority, greater good, you know, do it for your community, don't be selfish, right? So it's really challenged that Leo archetype, but it hasn't allowed that Leo archetype to express. So there hasn't been balance. So there needs to be this rebalancing. And the way in which we do that is we can release and we can start to bring back Leo energy into our life. And Leo is about our unique self-expression. How do we express our uniqueness? Our desire to be seen, right? If we have a desire to be seen, we've got to learn to see ourselves. We've got to learn to look at ourselves and value and love and see ourselves and our worthiness, rather than using our expression of ourselves to get that validation from external sources. So this rebalancing that's going to take place, especially as we have this lunation, and then we're going to have the final sort of Saturn transit of Aquarius, bringing us into Saturn, into Pisces in March. More on that to come later. Right now, no matter where this full moon is illuminating your chart or affecting you through a transit or a connection to your chart, or it's activating a particular point, and even if it isn't, it's releasing, because we're at the full moon point, it's always a release of energy that brings that sort of balancing. And it's a releasing of anywhere where you have sacrificed your unique self-expression for connectivity to community, social coherence, group mentality or social responsibility where you have been reluctant to express yourself because the impact that that might have on your social connection. So releasing that, where it's like, you know what, am I allowing groupthink, the authority to determine how I express myself? On a personal level, anywhere where you have been in, let's say, sacrifice or denial or repression or complete disconnect of your selfhood because of the desire for connecting or fitting in or going along or doing what's right. So releasing that. There is also, and this will come clear when we go through each of the houses, how we can specifically use the houses and the release of energy into a house to help us understand more personally how this may impact or affect you and what is being shifted and releases. But we have with this Aquarian energy objectivity, detachment, right? It is an air sign and it is about connection to the higher mind, right? And Christ consciousness. In other words, illumination from a higher source. That energy, we can only access that through heart space. You can't think your way into divinity, right? We have to intuit our way, we have to sense our way, we have to feel our way, and we do that through our center, not our polarity up here. So to enable access this Christ consciousness, higher mind perspective, there is a need to individuate from groupthink, from the collective, from what other people think in general. Because otherwise that limits or restricts your ability to connect to something beyond the self. So the process of individuating is to actually value and recognize your unique expression of self, your own, we're all cut from the same cloth, woven in different ways, right? So at the moment, with the loss of this Leo quality, you may be orbiting around other people's sun. That other people's sun might be your friends, it might be the government, it might be the narrative, it might be your family, it might be something outside of yourself, which you tend to sort of spin or orbit around that. So you haven't got the soul centric energy. You aren't at the center of your reality. You are orbiting around someone else's reality. What you're being told, what you're being, controlled to do. Leo is the sign of the sun, the sign of the heart, the sign of the center of the system. It's to become your own little solar system, to claim your own soul so that you are a star. And interesting that, the tarot card for Aquarius is actually called the star, right? So it's like, yes, there is Christ consciousness, but that comes down into your unique individuality and allows that expression of Christ consciousness through your selfhood. And your selfhood, right, without being egoic, your selfhood is your vehicle for your Christ consciousness to express. And when we have a liberated or fully awakened humanity, that's exactly how it will be. It'll be Christ consciousness, right, expressing uniquely, individualistically through the collective, through everyone, without any dependency on anything outside of self for reinforcement, validation, recognition, approval. It's like, no, that connection is from within, and that light source, that selfhood or light source shines from within me. That's my beacon of light here. And I am that light. I am that I am. Often, and we look at the tarot card for Aquarius, you'll see the water bearer, right? And in the tarot, it's depicted as a woman, even though Aquarius is a masculine sign. Air signs are masculine, fire signs are masculine. And we have this depiction of this feminine energy here. And that gives a little clue as to the receptivity of gnosis, knowledge, higher mind, is that we have to be in a state of receptivity. It's not a masculine job to connect to that. It's an allowance, right? And then when you're fully grounded in your selfhood and in your center, that connection is just, it's a natural connection that we have. When we're disconnected, we're up in our hemisphere, our heavens of masculine, feminine, we're going between the two, we're overthinking, we're overanalyzing, we're disconnecting from the selfhood, we don't allow that receptivity to happen. We don't allow that connection from knowledge gnosis above Christ center. So we have to be in a state of allowing, of receptivity, of feminine energy, which is being deadly grounded in our body, in our feminine, our earth, but also in our center, in our heart. And that allows access to that connection. So what I want to do now quickly is just run through the 12 houses of the zodiac. Just going to bring up the chart so I can use the chart to help you understand this as well. The other aspect of this, and you'll find it in my February update of the February astrology, is the square to Uranus. And so, yes, there's going to be change, and it does bring a different dynamic into this full moon, because we've got 16 degrees of Aquarius and Leo. We've also got 15, 16 degrees of Taurus, Scorpio, those points in particular. So if you are aware of your natal chart, 16 degrees is the point within your chart you want to look at. If you have fixed signs, this may be significant for you in some way, shape, or form. If you have fire or earth signs at 16 degrees, this could be quite empowering process for you. But anything at 16 degrees is really going to resonate at this frequency of this full moon. So if you haven't got a copy of your chart, email me. The details are below to get you can contact me through my website. Send me your birth date, your birth time, your birth location, and your name, and I will send you a copy of your chart free of charge. So I use this system, which is Astro Gold, through Esoteric Technologies, and this software, and the chart that I send has a nice little breakdown of all the different houses, placements, alignments, and things like that. So if you're interested in getting a free copy, send me a direct email and I'll organize that for you. So if you're aware of your chart, if you're not aware of your chart, this is probably the point of the video that you don't need to watch anymore. But if you're aware of your chart and you know your Leo house, then I'm going to run through the full moon through the houses. So the first house, this is the physical self. And with Leo energy here, it might be a realization, a revelation, or a shift of energy that allows more of your Leo quality to come through in your physical appearance, the way you present yourself to the outer world. Maybe it's a shift in the clothes that you'll wear, your wardrobe. Maybe it's a new hairdo. Maybe I can just have a quick shave and that'll do it. Maybe it's just the way that you assert yourself and that you have been disconnected through your self-image, right, or the persona you project, because you've been too reliant or concerned about others and what they may think, and not wanting to offend anyone. And it's time to reclaim that connection of selfhood. And when you come back down into your heart, use that symbolism of Leo, right, and ask yourself, like, am I being the lion here? Am I expressing my heart, my center, my pride, my roar? Am I allowing that to, guide me? Am I showing that to the world? Am I being that? So that's the first house. Second house, if you've got a Leo in your second house cusp, then Leo rules and the sun rules your second house. This is the house of values, money, possessions, skills. So there may be a shift or a revelation around your personal values. Are you in alignment to your personal values, or are you using money, wealth, or possessions as a way to feel empowered or to reinforce an identity? And which is natural and normal, but maybe this is the shift to go, actually, it's not about those things. Those things outside of me don't give me my value. I am the royal, I am the king, I am the queen of my reality. And I align my life and, the way I make money or produce an income through my personal value system. And maybe there's this sort of reconnecting to values from the central place, right? What are your central values? If we move to a Leo third house, or the full moon in your third house, this is our connectedness to our local environment. So our neighborhood, our local community, our brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, cousins and relatives. And maybe, again, here is where over the last 3 years, there's been a bit of a disconnect because, they're not necessarily aligning to your value system. So there's been this sort of disconnecting that's been happening, and you need to reconnect with your local community and connectedness. How do you do that? From love, right? So it's just come back in from that love, from that really grounded center of self, that self-love place. We don't need anyone else to be like us. We can accept them, that's where they're at. So if we can't come from our heart with our personal relationships and the way we connect to our community and our neighborhood and all of those siblings and those relatives close to us, if we can't connect to our heart because they don't reinforce, validate, value, or accept our unique value position, then we have allowed them, right, to determine our light. And we are, like I said earlier, we're in orbit around them. We aren't the center, they're the center, and we're coming around them, and we're adjusting how we present ourselves, how we communicate and express ourselves through speech or writing based on their reality, their value system. And for the vast majority of people, those in their local community, neighborhood, relative organization over the last 3 years, I guarantee, I've felt this personally, is a lot of them are just within the narrative. They're still unindividuated. They're in that conditioned state of awareness and consciousness. So you are going to be seen as a bit of an outsider to them. So this might be you know what, it's okay for them to see you. It's not about how they see you, it's about how you see you. And when you're grounded and connected to your center, it doesn't matter. You can accept them where they're at, and then you can ascend out of their orbit and start to reclaim sovereignty. So if we move Leo into the fourth house is the home and the family, but also the past. And it's also about our deep selfhood of self-acceptance and self-love. What do we do to show ourselves that we're worthy, that we're, that we love ourselves and we accept ourselves just as we are? So with this Leo full moon, it might be just to really need to reconnect to that self-love, self-acceptance. And how do you show that to yourself? If love is a verb, a doing word, it's an act, right? You don't, you do love, so how do you do love to yourself? Are you doing that? There might be the need to actually reconfigure your relationship to your past from a place of acceptance and from a place of love. A little bit of forgiveness or letting go, perhaps, so that you, again, are not, your unique self is not tied up with some event that's happened that you have just thrown you off your orbit. So maybe you're not orbiting around anything, it's just that you're not orbiting central, or you're not in that central place because you've got a wobble now. So an illumination of that. Now, fourth house Leos as well, it's about, home and family, but also joy, that inner sense of that childlike. Because if you think about traditionally what a home represents, it represents a place of comfort and security where you can be yourself. You don't have to wear makeup. You don't have to get dressed up. You don't have to act a certain way or be a certain way. You can just be yourself. So it allows that inner child to come out and just feel secure and feel safe. And maybe it's just reconnecting to that and the worthiness and seeing yourself, looking in the mirror and just going, wow, like I accept me. I see me. I love me. And reclaiming your power through that way. Fifth house, the house of children, the house of joy, romance, risk-taking, gambling, creativity, your creative self-expression, the natural home of Leo. So the full moon illuminating this area is like, you know what, maybe you need to pizzazz up your expression, or, you're going to really get creative. That creativity is that divine connection, right? Allowing creative flow or channel to come through you, right? It's not like, I don't feel I'm a creative person. It's like, get that self, that lower self, that limited self out of the way. Be in that place of receptivity and allow that higher energy to come through. It also might mean that you have to put yourself central again. And you may have, over the last 3 years, you may have got a little bit disconnected from that. And you may be sort of falling into line in, just keeping low profile and not wanting to sort of ruffle feathers or to be seen at all. So now it's like to go, I'm safe to be seen in this world. And when you look at yourself in the mirror and realize that you are here to see yourself, you are here to recognize yourself, and that no one else is, dependent upon that, it's like, I see me, I see all of me, and I let all of me shine. And that's, this little light, I'm going to let it shine. Fifth house, Leo. Sixth house, there's a couple of things with the sixth house. It deals in refinement and also service and health. So if you've been going through some health issues, then I send out my condolences and wish you all the best on a speedy recovery. But there may be, with regards to health issues, there may be an identity issue that you've identified with something that has now manifested itself as a physical illness. And that identification may be the words of another, maybe the criticism you've faced of another, an unworthiness or not feeling valued. It may be you've not felt good enough and you've just identified with that, and it's manifested itself into some physical dis-ease or illness. The other aspect of the process of refinement is it doesn't have to be all work and no play, right? So we can go through the process of refinement if we understand that that's really the game here, is that we're on this eternal journey of constant soul evolution and growth and refinement. And it's not about the goal, it's about the journey. And along that journey, give ourselves permission to have fun, to play, and that is a process of refinement as well. And not to just look at it as like, I'm becoming all spiritual, I'm doing yoga and Pilates, I'm eating vegan and I'm not doing anything and I'm watching. And all of a sudden you become rigid, you become too detached from that Leo lioness quality, which is just to play, to be enjoyed, to have pleasure, to have fun, to not take things too seriously. So the pathway of self-refinement, remember the Virgo house, the sixth house, is the light of introspection, where we do a lot of internalizing and a lot of personal self-development. So it doesn't have to be, dark and dreary and like I've got to be strict and disciplined. And yes, discipline's a process, but joyful diligence. In other words, you're adhering to your discipline from a place of love and joy, not from a place of pressure or like seriousness, becoming too rigid. And the other aspect of this is the act of service, which is normally done through work, right, in our modern culture. So are you showing up to work through this, obligation sense, like, oh, it's just like, I gotta do this? Or are you actually being in the act of service from the place of love? Because when you show love, you receive that. Don't wait for it, or the recognition or praise or approval or the attention from being of active service. Actually bring that energy to it and see what happens. And it will dramatically transform the way in which others respond to you, especially out of the act of service. So bringing love to it and then expressing that as well. In the seventh house, Leo. So relationship, how are you showing up in your key personal relationships? And have you become a little bit disconnected from the center or from the place of love? Have you looked to others as a means to sort of, hide your light under their light? Or to, the moth is attracted to the flame sort of thing. So have you allowed someone else's light to determine your orbit? Are you stuck sort of going around? With that Leo energy in that, it's you're learning how to be the full expression of yourself in your relationships, instead of thinking you need to be or express a certain way in order to have a relationship, right? So if you're doing the latter, you're not being your true authentic self. You're being a version of yourself that you think you need to be in order to seek that validation or that recognition or that attention from a loving partner. Whereas, and that can be nice for a period of time, but in long term, it brings imbalance because it's this continual having to be someone that you're not in order for the relationship to maintain balance. So what needs to happen is there needs to be a shift and a releasing of that and coming back to go, no, this is me, accepting me, seeing yourself and being yourself truthfully in your relationships. That may create a little bit of turbulence and imbalance and the shifting of energy, but long term, the person that you're with, you want them to see the real you. You want them to value the real you and love the real you, not the version of you you're being in order to seek their love and validation. So that's some of the energy that could shift in the seventh house. This was going to be a short video. We're going on with time, but anyway, let's just march on. If the full moon is falling through your eighth house, this is the house of shared resources. And also where we seek or get support. And are you needing to be a certain way in order to feel supported by someone else? Does it mean that you have to be the light that, supports someone else? And also this is the house of transformation through death and rebirth. Maybe there is a particular identity with your selfhood that's going to be like needs to die, you know, and a part of your identification. If we think of the ego as not necessarily one ego, but egos where we have many identities and they can be attached to certain ways of being or people or situations or, you know, anything. It's like, is there an aspect of that where you can allow that identity that's not balanced, that's not aligned to your unique, authentic self, for it to be let go, to be released, to be purged, to go through that process of transformation? The death of the not self is perhaps this full moon and a realization of that, that the shifting of the energy. Full moon in the ninth house, with Leo in your ninth house. This is my Leo house. So my Leo energy rules my ninth house. And this is the house of beliefs and ideals, the big picture and world vision. So it is about, when it comes to my ability to speak out, to sort of to say what I think about what's going on in the world, to give you my perspective, my unique personal perspective on the bigger picture. This is me, my Leo. This is how I express a lot of my selfhood, is I look at the world through the lens of myself. And I go, well, I wouldn't do that, or I don't see it like that. And that's how I do it. And that's when I do these types of things, I'm always looking at it from my selfhood perspective. And the way I teach is I teach how I see it. So releasing of anything there could be some beliefs, limiting beliefs, some ideals, some way you see yourself when it comes to your connection to the bigger picture, and letting go of what others think, letting go of what you think you should do, or the insecurity about wanting to offend someone else, and just expressing yourself. When it comes to your 10th house, this is the house of your goals, your public persona, your ambitions, your career as a vehicle for the self to express itself in the world. And there could be this desire or need to actually align that area of life back into the heart center and back into this unique sense of selfhood. Maybe you've been using your vehicle, your career as a vehicle for recognition. And that means that you've become a little bit detached from self because you think you need to be someone you're not in order to sense that or get that feedback. So maybe it's just this releasing of, you know what? This is me, and this is who I am in the world, and this is what's important, and I'm just going to let go of all the other shit, the stuff that I've built up around the not self. And maybe that means that there is a revelation when it comes to what you're doing in the world, the career. Maybe there's a breakthrough. Maybe it's like a realization that it's not so much the career, it's the way that you're doing it that needs to change. And you need to reconnect back to what really matters, your center, so that you can reignite your passion and your commitment to your career path. Maybe it's just the revelation that something deeply needs to change because it's not your public persona or your career don't allow for that unique you to come through. That could be quite challenging for Leo in the 10th house. For your group identity, your social connections with Leo in this house, it's like you want to fit in, you want to belong, but how have you denied the true self, right? The authentic self, in order to feel that sense of belonging and connected to others. And that can mean you have superficial connections, that you haven't actually established those deep, heartfelt connections with a wider community or group. Or maybe it's just because, you know, you're lacking that altogether, and you're a fear that if you are your unique, wonderful, wild, sort of Aquarian Leo unique self, that no one's going to like you or resonate with you. And that's just a story. That's a limiting belief, and that's not true. You find your crew when you find you. And you find where you belong when you realize that the belonging is a sense of self. You belong to self, and you're allowing that just to be, and you're free to express that self. You'll then attract like-minded people. Like attracts like. Instead of who do I have to be in order to fit in, feel connected? So a shift in energy around those dynamics. And then Pisces house, the 12th house. A couple of things here. There could be the releasing, letting go, something coming to the end. Something where it's no longer serving you, maybe where you've had to be again a certain way in order to have a certain reality, and now it's like, actually I'm not going to be that anymore. I'm letting go completely. I'm just going to surrender. If you're surrendering, what are you surrendering to? just the center and the heart, and you're going to center to that. This house is also the house of the unconscious. So things can come with a full moon happening in the 12th house. You can have this illuminating energy that comes to your awareness in that area of life. So let's just say that there is some unconscious or semi-conscious aspects of self that haven't seen the light of day. And this could illuminate some of those energies where you get to just surrender into, you know what, yeah, this is how I want to be. This is how I want to show up in the world. Endings, undoings, karmic releasings is the 12th house. A shift of energy in that area of life can mean that bigger connection to, you know, the transcendental point of view. So it's like what has to be let go and ended so that new life can come through, and allow that deeper connection to the self, the true self, the Leo, the heart center. So on that, with the 12th house, oneness has nothing to do with sameness, right? So oneness has nothing to do with sameness. And this is the point that I want to get to at the end of this discussion, is that with this balancing of these archetypes, Aquarian and Leo, we can sometimes think that the process of individuation is the end. And no, it's self-transcendence is the end. It's transcending the not self, the truth, all of that energy into oneness. We don't do that through sameness. It's not a process of, you know, having to be like someone else or needing them to be like you in order for that unity to happen. It's actually like unity can happen, that oneness, that connection can happen, not through sameness, but through individuality, through uniqueness. So I'll leave you with that. This is my Leo full moon video. If you've watched it this far, thank you. Don't forget to hit the like button. Thanks so much for everyone's support that supported me. If you want to get a personal reading, yes, I do personal readings over Zoom. So anywhere in the world, I have clients all over the world, in North America and the UK and Singapore and Portugal and all over. Also see clients here in Australia. So if you're wanting to get a personal reading, if you want to use your chart to help access the real you, you know, one thing that can happen on the pathway of awakening is that we can feel a little isolated, disconnected, and alone. And we can be like, well, okay, I'm deconditioning and detaching from all of the bullshit in the world and all of the things we're being led to believe we're supposed to be or have or do in order to feel who we are. And you can let all that go, but then there's this massive void. And it's like, well, you know, this whole identity crisis can come through as a part of the process of individuation. So what a birth chart can help do is reconnect to the unique you, right? It's through the lens of astrology, which is the great cosmic clock, which is Leo. So if you wanted to get a session, definitely reach out, and you can do that through my website. Peace out, guys. See you guys real soon. Thanks for watching.